Welcome to the Outside Insights podcast. Our goal is to provide content and ideas that help you close your personal and professional gaps by hearing how others have done it. I'm your host, Chris Burkhardt, and today we're thrilled to have Miriam Dicks on the show. Welcome to the show, Miriam.
Hi, thanks for having me.
It's good to have you here. Thanks for coming on Outside Insights today. Very much appreciate it.
Sure. I'm excited about our conversation today.
I'm glad. So our goal, I always like to frame it for our audience, is to discuss culture and the work that Miriam does to help a business maximize its success via culture and people. I know this is how Miriam thinks and operates in her work, so I look forward to that. Miriam is founder and CEO and strategist of 180 Management Group. She's a very strong operational leader who helps businesses transform and achieve optimal operational performance. One thing I think is really cool, certified change management designation and a John C. Maxwell team member. If you don't mind me cherry picking, what's it take to get a change management designation these days?
Oh gosh. So some coursework on the change management practice and then taking this long exam to get your credential. I think that exam was 100 multiple choice questions based on all of the different practices that, go into change management principles and policy. So it was pretty significant study.
So, one of the core values in my staffing firm Placers involves, being an agent of change. And I think how over the years, I kind of took it lightly that because it was a value that I thought it would be easy. Well, I tell you, even if you ask people to sit in the driver's seat of the bus, I don't think anything's harder than change and managing change and dealing with change. And of course, it's so easy and contrived to say that it's our constant today, right? It's in everything we do. And is it a big part of how you do your work? Is that model always in the work you do for customers?
Well, what's interesting about this whole change management designation is that I was doing the work of change management before I knew there was a designation for it. So, thinking back 15, 20 years ago, in the space that I was working in mergers and acquisitions. And so in that mergers and acquisition space, there's always this indoctrination. There's always this space for understanding the culture of an organ. Well, there should be a space for understanding the culture of an organization that's being acquired by another, so that when you're trying to, bring that organization under this new umbrella, you have less friction. But what we were challenged with and tasked with was mostly doing the work of operations, due diligence and those things, make sure things were, on paper actually existed in those companies. We were not necessarily trained to understand change management, because project management is about the tasks, change management is about the people. And so when you leave that component out, you can really have sort of this mismatch in culture. So what we were trying to do 15, 20 years ago was make sure people were on board with this change. And that's what change management is all about, making sure you're bringing people along with a project, with an initiative, so that the work gets done and the changes stick. Without the people component, you will have some failed initiatives. And so change management in its form today, that certification process, this idea that we need change agents and change leaders, was something that was underdeveloped when I first started, in my career path, that has now taken off into this new opportunities, new areas for folks to really hone in on, bringing people along with change.
Does it give you energy to talk about some of the components of change, or what you think are interesting stories or lessons learned with things that you've worked on and for customers?
Does it give me energy? Sometimes. Especially if I'm talking about a great change initiative, right? It's like, oh, come on, we just, knocked that one out of the park and we were able to do this, we were able to do that. But then other times it's like, oh my gosh, we had some issues with, the being able to have some of our folks who were, bucking against the pricks, if you will, getting this work done. And you're like, oh gosh, it's terrible. But at the end of the day, I don't mind talking about most any part of change, but I will say that it's always great to have the actual concrete examples and the stories that go along with it, because that's what makes it sticky. That's what makes it memorable. So yeah, we can delve into some of those concepts.
So again, just a little bit of fun here in the beginning. I was never a Who Moved My Cheese fan, but I do love Your Iceberg is Melting. So I don't know if you've ever read that story about penguins, but that one, I don't know. For some reason, I identify with those penguin characters and the roles they play, and the habitual things they do around change that represent all of our behaviors. So I don't know if you have a comment on that. If not, we'll move forward. But
I do not. I actually have not heard the penguin story, so you have to tell me about that one day.
Oh, I absolutely will do that. So why don't you take a second and talk about your business and the type of things that you enjoy doing and have impact on with your customers?
So 180 Management Group was really started 10 years ago after I left the healthcare scene, working in operations in that mergers and acquisitions space, because I wanted to be able to have more time at home with the family. I was traveling a lot. I mean, I was serving, 4 states, 11 systems, hospital systems, and it became a bit much at that time. And I thought, you know what? There are not a lot of opportunities where I live for me to do the work that I'm doing because it's so highly specialized. I'll start a consulting firm. Who doesn't want to do that? And so I started the consulting firm thinking that I was going to work with a lot of healthcare organizations, maybe not just, physician practices, which is where I got my start, but even some of the ancillary healthcare organizations like, labs or home health or case management, all those sorts of things. But what I found out was that I had a transferable skill set. What the mergers and acquisition space did was allow me to go into organizations and understand how they work and what made them successful. And once I understood what made them successful, we could build on that so that they can continue to evolve and to grow as organizations. And so that's how we transitioned 180 Management Group from healthcare consulting into operational consulting, management consulting. And in that space, we understand that, it takes a lot of different resources to help organizations evolve. If we wanted to align their people, processes, and planning so that they could really, reach mission, if they're mission-driven organizations, or reach their goals, we had to have more than just management coaching and consulting. We need to have some leadership coaching and consulting there. So we do have that as well, because we know that you could build a machine and someone can't run it. So we have to make sure that we have, folks who can help bring leaders up into that space. So we do leadership consulting, management consulting, and we also provide support services. So sometimes there are not enough hands in the pot to really get the initiatives off the ground. And so we also add that support service component to it as well. So coaching, consulting, contracted services are in our wheelhouse. And so we, do this work with organizations who are finding themselves in that space of growth or transition. So sometimes there's leadership coming in or leadership going out. Sometimes there is new funding available. Sometimes there are new initiatives on the table. Sometimes there are a lot of failed initiatives, a lot of misses and misfires, and you're bringing someone in to say, hey, we're at the cusp of change. Help us figure out how to move forward. What is our path forward here? And that's what we do. And that's where we specialize.
There's that change thing again.
Yeah.
I'm reading and seeing a lot that really big consulting is a little flat. It's at a crossroads. Looking at hiring where they're not bringing in as many new staff, that they're laying things. I think being flexible, mid-size, startup business has a lot of advantages. Are you finding that the consulting marketplace is shifting and changing, or is there just plenty of opportunity because there's a lot of people who are, I know everybody's trying to grow and everybody's trying to change, doesn't mean they're willing to pay for it.
Right. I have a couple of thoughts about that. One is location matters. So, I recently moved from South Carolina to Maryland and, of course, moved my business. We do see clients across the U.S., but we were based out of one state. And the opportunities that are available in one state may look totally different than the opportunities in another state. And I say that because I was in a space where I was doing a lot of B2B work in South Carolina and some B2C work, very little. But I'm in a place now where I can do B2G work, business to government.
What's the G? Oh, the government. Ah, yeah.
So
I see your point. Yeah, and it is a strong government market if you're in the Baltimore, Washington megalopolis.
So yes,
very strong.
The B2G work is now available for us. So we have an opportunity for B2G work that we did not have necessarily in South Carolina. In Maryland, where we're located, we're in Annapolis, Maryland, 30 miles outside of Baltimore, 30 miles outside of DC. We're in that DC, Maryland, Virginia area, the DMV area. And within 100 miles, I can't tell you how many government agencies are located here and how much contract work is available, even for consultants in this space of maybe business process improvement, leadership development, all those things. And so there is a market for that in government contracting. And so that is something that I had not considered before, and that's a new opportunity. And so I am definitely, working to work in that space, getting things set up to work in that space. But in general, what I also noticed, having been a consultant, so prior to me starting my own firm, I was a consultant on payroll, like in a corporate setting. That was my title, consultant. Consulting has changed over the years, and I laugh at my husband, not at him. Well, sometimes I laugh at him, but I laughed with him recently.
That's a different podcast. However, come back to hear Miriam laugh at her husband.
We talked about how coaching has changed. It used to be that coaches didn't have as much access to data as they do now. And so they may have used more intuition. They may have had more knowledge capital to bring to the table to be a coach. But now you have all these statistics and performance metrics and all the data that's there. Consulting, that reminded me of consulting that back in the day, yes, it was still data driven, but a lot of it was still based on knowledge and experience and exposure. And right now we're seeing that a lot of the consulting work is based on analytics. And even some of the AI is coming into place. And so some of the humanness of consulting, I think, is leaving the field. And you can't take that out of consulting because the work is still being done by people. I know what the numbers say. I know what the data says, but taking that human feel and that human thought out of the work that we do, I think that does a disservice to some of our clients. I think us, as in the smaller businesses, we haven't lost that. Those larger firms that have access to all this data, they may be losing some of that, and that might be part of the decline. But that's my thought process. I probably am partial because I do like, the fact that I can go into an organization and say, I've been in your shoes. I didn't just learn this from my data. I have worked in this space. I know how you feel. I can make this connection and I can help you succeed. And that's something, I think that's a nuance and a niche that we feel.
So the name of your company, I made assumptions. The 180 degree, is that about that view, or is it about completely changing perspective and getting people to turn around 180 degrees and see things differently?
It is the latter. It's about the change. It's about the turnaround, going into the right direction. Maybe you were not going in the right direction before, and we come in and help you change perspective and get you to moving into the right direction. So it's about the turnaround. It's about the change.
That makes sense. If you think about your work, what is it that you say you have the greatest impact on, the type of project where you're really bringing to bear what you know, the model you like to use, the expertise that you have? What's your choice customer situation and project that that you're going to deliver the most value?
So let's talk about from a pain point standpoint.
Okay.
When a leader of an organization is frustrated and
Don't look at me that closely. Don't look at me like that. No. Sorry.
Frustrated and stressed.
I'm not that frustrated. Go ahead.
About the direction their organization is going in and the day-to-day work that's being done. And they can't quite figure out why they're not getting traction, why they're still missing the mark. They know how to make money, they know how to lead, they know how to do all sorts of things, but they can't see from where they sit what's wrong with the organization as to why they are struggling, why they are not getting the performance they believe they should out of the team that they have, whether that's not being able to utilize the resources that they have available to them effectively, whether it's, that they are having some financial difficulties and they haven't quite figured out what's causing that financial difficulty, or maybe they have and they still can't figure out the best way to approach that particular situation. We come in and we do an assessment. That is one of the tools that I created called the groundwork assessment. It is sort of a mix between an audit and a change readiness assessment. Recently got it copyrighted with the U.S. Copyright Office. And we use that tool as a way to help bring clarity to the issues that an organization is facing. And in that first step of doing that assessment, I can tell you that 90%, if not 95% of the leaders that we talk to when we start going through that assessment are like, you hit the nail right on the head. You just hit it on the head. This is us. This is us. And we're able to, they're able to see this issue in a way that they haven't seen it before. It's verbalized, it's articulated. And in many cases, we can isolate certain issues so that we can then begin to have a change management plan, a project plan, the initiatives that we need to undergo to get that organization where they need to be. So for me, it is being able to do the assessment and seeing the light bulb go off for a leader that this is exactly what our issue is. Now let's have a plan of attack.
So within that assessment, is it survey, interview, data collection, observation? What else is there? How do you, first of all, I think if you're sharing it with that organization and they're able to give you the feedback of like you're on track or you're not, that's everything, right? That's part of driving change, is to get them a part of it.
Exactly.
But how do you collect all that data and all that observation?
So it's sort of a high level overview with detailed implications.
Sure.
So in other words, we are looking high level at all of the administrative components to that organization: finance, HR, IT, marketing. We're looking at, how, if they have a department, how it's structured, if they have reporting available, all those sorts of things. They have a dashboard, what are the KPIs, so forth, so on. We're also looking at the structure of the organization, their org chart, their, layout of who's doing what work. We're also conducting an employee engagement survey to figure out what employees think. It's one thing for you to interview management team, which we do. We do interviews with the management team, and they provide us with what they think problems are, and we ask them questions that we're finding in the audit. Okay. But it's another thing to, work directly with and not face to face, but to get the perspective and feedback of the everyday worker, right? So the employees of the organization. And so we'll do an employee engagement survey as well. And we collect all that data and we put it into sort of this huge, spreadsheet, if you will, that has all these formulas, and it sort of tells us where the problem areas are for the organization as far as the scoring is concerned. And when we bring that in front, bring that report to the table, they can clearly see a map.
Yeah.
Right. That says, oh, we're struggling here. And these are processes that lend to this struggle. But this is also the people problem that lend to this struggle. And these are some of the strategic problems that lend to the struggle, right? So then they have this plan or this roadmap, if you will, of where their priorities should be if they want to get back on track. And that, again, that tool has been one that has really, I think, given us the most success in being able to change and help organizations turn things around.
I'm very curious. First of all, thank you. I've been around consulting my whole life and managed it and struggled to do it and still do it in an entrepreneurial and, scaling up setting. I don't want to make an assumption that this is an operational, you have operational expertise. It's everything that you do. Are you looking at the gap between their strategy and their execution as well? Or is that too high level in terms of things, in terms of what you're looking at? Would you be
Well,
more at a process level or a business unit level or an initiative level?
we're looking mostly at a process level.
Sure.
And when it comes to the initiatives, we can back into those initiatives as to why they may not be effective.
I
So
see.
if,
Yeah.
when it comes to strategy, we can say, well, if you don't have reports, how do you know that you're meeting your strategy? One thing that we do also ask our clients for is a copy of their strategic plan, because
Sure.
if the operations don't align with the strategy, we still have a problem. So we
Yeah.
kind of back into strategic problems based on how they've structured the organization. And I think that's what makes it practical. And that's what helps with the day to day. Because if you're not structured to meet strategy, then you're always going to feel as though you're behind the curve. So let's figure out, why we are having these issues with implementing the strategy that's on the books. Now, one thing that we do find out often, especially in our nonprofit world, is that we could have a strategic plan that hasn't been updated. And so we really don't have a good strategy. We're just flying off, by the seat of our pants. It's just off the cuff, right? And that's part of the problem.
Welcome
Why
to
we have
not-for-profit world.
that's why we have lack of employee engagement, and we have all these other problems because we're just flying, by the seat of our pants. But and not to belittle the sector, I do believe that they craft their strategic plans 3 to 5 years, usually 5 years out. And so much has changed in that time period. They hadn't had a chance to go back and really update their strategy, or maybe it wasn't as flexible as it needed to be. And so that's part of the struggle.
I agree with you, Miriam. I agree. I think the one that those plans, you've got all those stakeholders, all those board folks, all the volunteers, whatever. Everybody gets together. They have this one-time fixed event. It's 3 to 5 years, but for the rest of us, the for-profit world, our one-page strategic plans are changed every damn day,
Right.
Miriam, I have a theory for you on consulting too. It's not my original theory, but it's a studied thing. I think it used to be we would get hired to solve a known problem. That might be oversimplifying, but we were brought in, you or me, or both were in together, and there we'd sit down and they'd say, I want you to focus in this area. But what I feel today is business is so complex, generally speaking, that the ownership of the initiative, the problem is shared, distributed, may not be in one location. And the problem is nobody knows who can solve the problem and has permission to, and they can't define the problem. And it's been, I guess it's consulting 3.0, is that instead of us being brought in to solve a known problem, we're in this spot where it's hard to get people's attention because they're not sure really what they own, even though it's not working the way they want.
And I'm sitting here trying to remember a conversation that I had recently about, and I want to say, I hope I don't misquote this, but I think it was Simon Sinek. Was it Simon Sinek? I don't know. Let me not
Miriam,
say it.
Miriam, we can always do this. Go with it, and then we'll make the adjustment in liner notes. Okay, so just go with it, and we'll work on it together.
Okay, so there's this idea that what we are faced with today is more complex than what we were faced with yesterday, and that problems are not just problems, they're mysteries. It used to be that we had all the puzzle pieces and we knew what the box, how you buy the puzzle, it has the picture of the puzzle on the front of the box. We knew what the puzzle's pieces should look like. We just had to find the pieces and put them in the right place. Now we have pieces with no picture. That's the difference between being complex and being a mystery versus just being a problem to solve. And so we're now going into organizations trying to help them solve mysteries without having a good idea of what the picture should look like. Because we used to know, but now things have changed so much. We don't know what the picture should look like. And that's what it's like going into consulting these days, where the face of the face of business, how business is conducted, what it should look like, the ethical implications of our work. All those things are changing because new tools are being created, new technology is being introduced, and there are new variables that we've never considered before. And so we don't have the picture anymore. We just have the pieces.
And so what disturbs the model is we used to be able to solve a problem for Kraft and sell it to Nabisco. And now
Yes.
it's all one-offs. Now it's some of it is one-offs, right? The complexity. Yes. So I don't know. It's really, I hope my audience likes it. I like this dialogue. I think it's fun. So if you could teach one lesson, what is it that you like to teach?
Wow. There are so many good nuggets that I think I've learned over the years.
Well, pick one and go with it.
Pick one and go with it. So change doesn't happen in a vacuum. When it comes to, moving an organization forward, it's not just one person's idea, and that's what, the change is made from. And that's what moves the organization forward. And it's not one person in isolation thinking through these things. It needs to happen up front, out front, and with a lot of perspective. And so if we're going to be able to move an organization, transform an organization, we have to be thinking about who needs to be at the table. Because sometimes, it's just one person at the table, or not the right person at the table, and we don't have the right information, we don't have the right perspective to make that organization, to get that organization to where they want to be. So it just doesn't happen in a vacuum.
Does the organizational culture influence the lesson you just taught?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I find that we do a lot of work in the nonprofit space, mission-driven space. And I don't think I've said this, but, I've worked for nonprofit and for-profit hospitals. So hospitals and healthcare tend to be in that mission-driven space. So it's not just a nonprofit, mode of thinking, but mission-led organizations. But one of the things that I've noticed in that nonprofit space specifically is, the founders syndrome. So you have folks who've founded organizations, and let's say it's been 20, 30 years now, and we have a lot of folks who are retiring. But founder syndrome is a real thing. And what happens is that, however, that founder's mentality drives a lot of the culture of the organization. So it's the founder's personality is the business personality, and business personality is culture. And so, if the founder has certain ideas about their baby, because this program or this organization was their baby, it's hard to bring other people to the table because they don't want to share their baby. And that's culture. If we think about culture in its truest sense, if we go to the dictionary, it says culture is shared beliefs, behaviors, and practices. And if there's only one belief at the table, that's going to influence all the culture, because everyone has to think the same way, believe the same way. It produces a behavior and practices. So yes, culture is what we call the apex predator for organizations. What is an apex predator? It's a predator that doesn't have any other predators. And so, there's the saying, and I'm sure that, someone can quote the person who said this. I'm terrible with names, but they say that culture eats strategy for breakfast, or depending who you talk to, for lunch or dinner. But culture does eat strategy. If you don't have a culture that adapts well to change, if you don't have a culture that's open-minded, if you don't have a culture of teamwork, all those things matter. So when you bring new initiatives to the table, they can get eaten because
culture
of culture.
Eats strategy for lunch. That was either Drucker.
I think
we're going to have to look that one up.
I think it's Drucker.
I don't think.
Actually,
you think it is Drucker?
Yep. We're gonna have to look it up. Now I've got my phone.
It's so interesting.
Curious,
I love the visualization of that apex predator, because culture really then it has a good side, but it has a downside, a dark side. everything has a pro and a con. And if you look at it and hold it up in the light a certain way, and I think you're right about the founder's syndrome. I mean, I think about that a lot for myself, Miriam. It can be been around 24 years. And after a while, those ideas, I think it's really important for organizations to have succession plans, not because I couldn't lead forever, although I don't, who would ever want to do that, right? But I think it's important for change and for leaders to come in with a different perspective and a different baby, right? A different baby, So
yeah,
I like where you are with that.
It was Drucker. I looked it up. It was Drucker.
Thank you.
But the idea that we're so passionate about what vision we believe we have for the organization makes it difficult for us to allow others to come in to critique it. Because, how can you say someone's baby's ugly? It's
Sometimes
really hard
the
to do
baby
that.
Is ugly, though. I've seen ugly babies, but you can't talk about it. You're right. You're like, oh, isn't that baby cute?
I just say so precious. You never say anything about the looks. You just say it's so precious.
That makes me laugh.
So it's hard to critique someone's baby, someone's vision, unless they give you permission. And you have to be a very secure leader to be able to provide permission to allow someone to say, maybe you're not thinking about this correctly. Maybe there's something we can add to this. Maybe there's something we should change or trend or, just tweak or something. But you have to be at a place where you give permission for that. And so if you are a leader and you lead without that sort of permission, then you're setting yourself up for a culture of people who just follow and never give you any real feedback. Have a lot of yes people around you, and you can't effectively have a really strong, viable, forward-thinking, agile organization with yes all around you.
I don't think anything needs to be added to that. I agree with you completely and think that I wonder if folks even notice that they have that around them, or if it just feels good to get yeses. You notice it maybe in results and outcomes.
Yeah. When we do the assessment, one of the things that we say, and we hold true to this, is that when we do those interviews with the leadership team, we are asking questions about their ability to provide, support, to contribute to the strategy and to the growth of the organization. And if there's a elephant in the room, we ask about it. The interview is not something that is going to be quoted in the results, in the summary report.
Sure.
It is an opportunity for us to really dig into some of the existing problems. And we trend it. So, if this particular problem comes up in multiple interviews, we can say this has come up several times in interviews. So that's not one person getting burned by, we found this out during an interview. But being able to have that level of transparency and communication, we hope that we can build trust with organizations and their leadership team to have those conversations, and then find a way very strategically, professionally, to say these are some issues within the culture of the organization that, if not addressed, will continue to keep you here. And I've had that not go well, to be quite frank with you. Well,
I think I could imagine. I assume that the organizations are implementing. You're making recommendations.
We're making recommendations. We provide even, strategic plans, like as far as like this is the strategy that you guys should employ. Here are the steps even to get this done. And if you want us to manage it from a project management standpoint, we'll help you manage this initiative, this undertaking, this project. And if you don't have enough hands, we'll provide some people who can actually do the day-to-day for you. So we try to give as many options as possible. If you want to take this strategy, do it yourself, by all means, please do.
Sure.
But if you need someone to help you manage through it, we can do that. And if you need someone to actually do the work, we can do that as well. And so we do provide those options. And some organizations will say, based on our budget, we just need to do this ourselves.
Do you think most customers understand? Do they think the assessment is the product, or the recommendations is more the product, or do most view it as the total, as the product?
I'd say that for us, we do it in stages anyway. So the actual assessment has high level recommendations, and that
Sure.
is the product. That's just the product. It's an assessment with high level recommendations. If you want to go deeper into how to take those recommendations into a workable strategy, that's another level of product.
That's another product. Okay. That's very helpful.
Because
a lot of
at the
times
end of
in
the
the world of
day,
staffing,
if
we do
you don't agree with our
less analytical
recommendations,
assessments. Okay.
Say that again. I'm sorry.
That's okay. In high-level, large staffing programs, we'll do assessments that are a little less analytical. And it's, information known enables you to solve a problem, build a program, identify areas of opportunity, leverage strengths, solve problems, all the stuff you've been saying. But most times people view us assessing, gathering information as simply discovery, Miriam, in order to staff for them. It's just an interesting thing that our discovery has been minimized, even though I've often thought it's a product, and it is at times, but in our industry, it gets shifted to the business model gets monetized with delivery of staffing. So just curious stuff.
For us, we think about that whole discovery process and assessment process as a way to understand if we're a good fit to work together for a larger scale engagement. Because at the end of the day, if what we produce as far as the assessment and discovery is concerned, you are not, it's not something that resonates with the client to the point where they're like, oh gosh, we just really need to do this right now.
Sure.
Then we know, that this may not be a good fit because we're saying these things you should do, and you really should do them now if you want to get to where you're saying you want to get to. And if it's dismissed at that stage, we already know it would be a very difficult client to work with to really have any kind of sustainable impact. And so I'd rather part ways at the discovery phase if we're already seeing a descent there.
So, Miriam, I probably have had 20 or 30 executive director or presidents of not-for-profits on this show in the last 5 years. What is it that, I'm not sure all of them listen. Some of them do. Some of them are close. Some of them we work with. If you're thinking of that audience, any ideas or best practices you would want to share with the not-for-profit sector? Things that, I don't mean you to give away your trade secrets, but what would you offer as some comments to that audience, the leaders of the not-for-profit sector that you serve?
Oh gosh. One is to be flexible and to build that into a strategic plan, some agility.
You mean like I can touch my toes? I don't think you mean that.
I don't mean that. Flexible as in the vision is where you're going. How you get there may need to change. We live in a dynamic.
Iterate, it'll change.
Yeah. I mean, we live in a very dynamic world right now, especially in our business world. We have a new president coming in. We have, local politicians change, laws change, funding changes, all those things happen. And sometimes the strategic plan is so long range that it doesn't account for all these changes that happen, within 2 years or 3 years. But to think about, shorter strategic plans versus 5 years, maybe should be 3, because then you still be possibly within one president.
I like 3 years because then it's 12 quarters and I can hold on to 12 quarters,
Yes. Yeah, I do. I agree with you. 3 years to me is a sweet spot. Now,
Okay.
for in the for-profit side, we have a little more aggressive sort of take on that, but 3 years nonprofit. The other piece is, when it comes to the strategies as to how you get to where you say you're going, to have some flexibility in, having maybe even some plan Bs, some contention planning. What's it called? Is that contention? The word is slipping
Contingency
my mind.
planning? Sure. Yeah,
Contingency.
contingency
Thank you.
planning? Yeah, sure.
Contingency. That word was just escaping me. Contingency planning as part of, their strategic plan. And then also make sure that you have the right people at the table, that it's not just you and a board member coming up with strategy.
Why is that important?
Oh
I made
gosh,
you
for
laugh, but man, yeah,
so
I mean,
many
I know,
reasons.
but give me a couple. Come on.
So, okay, some of this is political and we all know it. It was
Yep.
one person, it was executive director or CEO and a board member that came up with a strategic plan because maybe there were some trust factors going on with the rest of the board. We only hired, we only brought in, yes, people on the board or people who don't understand our business model and who can't really make effective decisions. So we don't even ask them to come on to this
Oh, it's not
planning
just
committee.
because I can go faster this way?
Sometimes it's because I can go faster this way. Sometimes it's because we don't want to have anyone derail us from what we believe should be happening. So we don't want to bring in, our staff members who are going to say, we can't do all this work because you're already asking us to do this on top of what we've already done. And what we are doing is not effective. So you don't want to hear the outside noise. You just want to do what you want to do. And so you have these two people at the table making these decisions that don't mean a lot to other people who have to actually do the work. They don't feel like it's realistic or practical and it's blind, they're blindsided by it.
Miriam, my image of that I've used is, and don't laugh at this, hopefully you've seen the movie Titanic. Most of the people probably have not. I always found that board member and that president are the woman in the nightgown out on the front of the Titanic. Yeah. And everybody else is hanging off the back of the damn ship, But I've always, to me, that's the visual of that moment. Like, because I see it all the time,
That's the moment. That's the moment. Yeah. We can't find consensus any other way, so we just do it ourselves, right?
Darn right.
And so, that is just, recipe for disaster and failure. But, bring the right folks in, I think one of the reasons why, especially staff and leadership, it's not brought into the strategic planning process is because they don't really have any good ways of making decisions. Decision making, there's no like matrix, there's no way of saying this is how we want to approach getting everyone's feedback and leveraging it and deciding what needs to go into what ideas are going to go into the plan.
I know it. I know you know it because you're both a business owner and you consult to all kinds of different businesses. Businesses are started by founders. They have a great idea. They probably do a handful of things better than anybody else if they're lucky. They get just enough money to sell stuff to keep the lights on. And over time, the idea grows. Mm-hmm. And I always think every day as that president and founder, I'm mitigating risk. Every day I find something that isn't very good, that that I need a Miriam to make a better process, a better system. And then I'm like, all right, I did that. Now it's like, oh shit, I grew. So what Miriam did 2 years ago now doesn't work anymore. Yep. Mm-hmm. Right? Mm-hmm. So there's this constant thing. Mm-hmm. So it's no wonder. Well, there's not really a good punchline other than there's no wonder that at most times we look into a business, there is a closet that needs cleaning relative to what you do or we do. And it's really interesting.
And, and it's the evolution of business.
Yes.
So if we don't go into it, the mindset that it should evolve, then we'll always try to keep it stable and as to like the way it started, right? So our idea of stability is that whatever was in our head when we started it is, as long as that works, it's stable.
Miriam, my wife has worked in and out of the business for 25 years, and she says, Placers is a good little business. If you could just stop changing so much, it would be a lot better. But she knows better. She does know better, but that's still like, it's the same thought, even though you know better. I get it.
Yeah.
Quick check-in. we're coming down the last couple of questions. Are we hitting on the things you want to share with my audience? Do you want to pivot and go in a different direction on anything? We can pause for a second and do that. And if not, I got a couple more questions to wrap us up. But
no, I love the trajectory that we're on. So let's keep it going. And if I think of anything, I'll definitely add it in. But right now, I love the conversation as it is. So let's keep on going.
All right. So how do you keep learning? How do you stay ahead of the curve in what you do?
So a couple of years back, I decided that I needed to have my own professional development plan.
Mm-hmm.
When I was gainfully employed, with larger corporations, they have professional development budgets for staff, and we could go to trainings and all that sort of thing. Then you learn quickly that when you go out on your own, that it's all one pot of money. So how are you going to spend it? Are you going to spend it to grow? Or are you going to spend it, on you in some form or fashion?
Miriam, I figured you would say is that your clients put you in these crazy situations where you got to learn, because that's certainly how the heck I learned,
Well, I will say that my clients did put me in crazy situations, but if I just grow my business off of what clients are saying, I'm missing what's happening in the industry. And so I have to have that both and perspective that, yes, I'm going to learn from my clients, but there are things that I need to learn as an entrepreneur in this industry that they can't give me. And so when I start looking at professional development, I'm looking at, am I a good speaker? Can I convey thoughts well when it comes to being able to present information? Are there trends in the industry that I'm unaware of, and how can I get that information so that I can share it with my clients, because I want to be a resource for them and I want to be a thought leader in this space. So one year I joined the John Maxwell team thinking I was just doing it for speaking, being able to be a better speaker, trainer, facilitator. And I learned so much more about business building than I ever thought I would learn, because they have a business building component that I had no idea about. And so that was a great business development and professional development opportunity for me. I recently enrolled at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. I decided I wanted to learn more about accounting. And then, a semester later said, that's enough accounting.
Man, I was going to say you're crazy, but you already knew you were.
I already knew I was crazy.
You already knew you were.
That's enough accounting. And I actually really think that for me, it would be better if I were enrolled in a doctoral program so that I can take this groundwork assessment tool and actually have some research behind it that will allow us to serve clients better. We already have the research that the data that we've collected from clients that we've used it on in the past, but I want to be able to analyze that information differently, qualitative information that we've gathered, and put the quantitative numbers behind it, and really, take that tool to scale, because I do believe that tool will help in this M&A space where there are a lot of failed acquisitions because of cultural fit. McKinsey put out some information about that recently, about the high percentage of failures of M&As because of cultural fit. And if there was a tool like what we have that will help be able to at least assess cultural fit along with this operational due diligence, that we might be able to make a dent in that area. And so I'm actually in the process of going through an admissions process with a doctor of business administration program. That this program is a very well-known program that allow us to do some research and really perfect what it is that we bring to the table. So for me, professional development is continual education in my field and being an expert and being a thought leader. On top of, yes, I get worn out by my clients.
Oh, I bet you do. Hey, it is none of my business, but I think the key to your business, if I don't offend you, is choosing the right juicy red customer. I think it has to be you choosing the right size customer. A lot of what you do on a small customer, unfortunately, I don't know if they benefit from, and it's just it's just some my thinking. I feel like with your operational prowess, you're going to have fun with this. But I'm guessing here, so you could professionally flick me off if you don't like this. Okay. So favorite business hack, favorite productivity thing that you've discovered, the life hack. How do you keep up with life? It seems like it's a popular, what would you share?
My life hack.
Or business hack, whichever you got.
I don't know if I have a life hack, but one thing I've had to learn recently is that in this space of entrepreneurship, that business has its own ebbs and flows that have nothing to do with my personality. Like, I used to take it all so personal. If there was something going on that impacted the business negatively and there was a dip in business, oh gosh, what did I do? When the business world has ebbs and flows, it has these things that impact its nature, its core, that have nothing to do with Miriam Dicks. Now, how I respond to it is everything. I didn't create the condition, but I certainly have to be in a position to respond to it. And to understand those differences has really made, for me, life that much sweeter, because I don't have to take it so personally that business is tanking if it tanks because of some outside, impact that I didn't know was going to happen, and it did. COVID is a prime example of that. We didn't see COVID coming, and it shut a lot of us down. And in the consulting space, if our dollars are considered an extra spend outside of core operations, then we're all struggling because there's not enough money floating in the economy for management consultants until we're coming out of the emergency situation and realize, okay, now we don't know how to function. Let's bring some consultants in. But those things happen. And, how I respond to it is totally up to me. What happened and what impacted the economy was not up to me.
My favorite, it's not really meant to be spiritual, or maybe it's meant to be more philosophical, is I think I spend a lot of time trying to remind people that the only thing they really control is the space between their two ears, Miriam. That's really all we control. Space between our two ears, our thoughts, how we handle things, how we react to things. It's not original.
Absolutely.
But I've adopted it. All right, we're going to bring it home with my favorite signature question. What advice would you give your 21-year-old self?
Okay. Gosh, my 21-year-old self. I would say to go for it. Like, there were some things I didn't do because I was worried about what others might think or how, I might, not like it. And I think I was just really timid and shy about, my career path and trajectory. And now I would say to myself, get out there and do it. Just do it. I actually just had this conversation with my 21-year-old son yesterday, as a matter of fact, to say, son, you don't want to have any regrets. Just do it. And he's like, yes, ma'am.
Miriam, I feel like that applies to anybody at any age. You can just get out there and try. Get out there and do it. Get out there and don't not have the experience. You know what I reflect on a lot? It's 100 years from now, nobody's going to give a hoot about this. Like, I'm not saying we're inconsequential, but man, why not go for it? Right? Because in the moment, the stuff that's in our head, so I'm completely supportive of you. Miriam, you're a one smart cookie, and you can come back anytime. Really enjoyed having you on the show. I think I haven't had a chance to talk about consulting and its best practices on the show in a while. And maybe you'll come back and share some of your wins down the line.
Absolutely. I would love to come back. I really enjoyed our conversation today. Took some twists and turns, but I think those are the best conversations to have. So thank you for this opportunity.
I agree with you.
And thank you for your thoughtfulness and just being just a great person. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Last year, my dad, Alan Burkhardt, and I released our book, Opposite the Crowd. It's January 2024, and we've released the paperback version of the book, and it's now available on Amazon, along with hardback, Kindle, and audio formats. We've adjusted the price to be more accessible for everyone. On Audible, it will cost you a credit, or you can pay outright. If you'd like to get the audiobook a little cheaper, you can look at Spotify and other outlets that sell audiobooks. We have the links to where you can find it in the show notes, so take you straight to it. And Opposite the Crowd. If you want the life you want, you got to know who you are.